Hey guys, so today on Beast Buff Outdoors, I may add this to a Field Gear Friday. Not sure how that's going to go, but we're going to talk about all the gear we used in Montana. Stick around. So let's start with some honest reviews of coolers, what we took and what we used, and then I'll give you a review on one. What we took was the Lifetime 115 that is IGBC certified, the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee. Basically, this cooler is supposed to be resistant to a direct attack by a grizzly bear. They can't rip it open. It's got a spot for padlocks, and it does have to be locked. We just used this to bring a harvested bear back home, which we did not do, so this cooler was never even actually used. And then we got the same thing, the 65 here, for the same reason, for whatever the 115 would not hold, but we didn't have to use it, so they never even got used. The cooler that I did use was one that I bought a while back. I was really excited to have. It was my first time using it. Was the Gator Waders 45 quart. It's supposed to be better than Yeti or Arctic or any of them, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not impressed with this cooler. Did not like it at all. It was overcast and rainy. We filled it up with ice and drinks on the way out. Within the first 8 hours, we had to put another bag of ice. And the second 8 hours, we swapped drivers, we had to put another bag of ice in it. And then we put another bag of ice when we got to Hungry Horse, and it was in the 70s. But it did sit in the direct sunlight on the interstate for, hours and hours, but it would not hold ice. Now I thought once the temperature of everything inside dropped, it would do better. But once we got it full of ice and the drinks were already cold, the temperature stayed between 60 and 40. We kept it in the tent while we were up on the mountain, and it held ice. But out in the sunlight at 77 degrees, it melted again. And then on the way home, it was 83, I think, when we were on the interstate, headed back out of like Big Fort, and our first stop, we went to get a drink, and the ice was already gone. So, not impressed. Another thing I noticed, this little pad here is glued on, and when I got home, I got it out of the truck and sat it on the porch till I could, get the drinks and stuff out of it, and the glue started separating and this pad started coming off. I glued it back on, but all in all, I know these are nitpicking things, but when you're talking about $200 coolers, I expect a little better. So the Gator Waders, not so much. It's a Gator Wader 45. Not impressed, and I really can't tell you anything about the Lifetimes. They seem pretty solid, but I didn't put ice in them, so I don't know. So the next section we're going to talk about, I guess you would say, like safety, my electronics, basically. The electronics that I carried. So start at the top. My headlamp is my Princeton Tech. Y'all have seen me use these before. I think this is the fuel. And I carried a backup, of course. I think this is called the React. I don't remember. But anyway, I've used Princeton Tech lights for years. I love them. I swear by them. I finally wore my original fuel out. This was actually a replacement, and I've had this one for quite some time. But highly recommend them. I kept my electronics in these Hilltop packs. They're like Dyneema or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's where I kept my lights while they're, in the lid of my pack. And then for safety, I guess you could say, I carried my Spot Gen 3. I've had this thing for years. Actually, this is what I carried when my daughter and I backpacked the Appalachian Trail. Still works. Now they actually offer a monthly subscription, so I just did the monthly. But you can send, text. I had a check-in, a morning and a night check-in, and then you got the track feature where you can upload your track. So your friends, family, loved ones, whoever can keep up with your journey. And I've used it. I love it. So for batteries, I had 2 or 3 different Anchor battery packs. This one, I think, is a 20,000 or a 30,000. I've got a couple of 10,000s and a couple of 20,000s. I took 3 or 4 of them with me. And then I use my Brunton. And I actually caught this on sale years ago. I don't remember where, maybe like REI or something. And we used it while we were up on the mountain. We laid it out. It's got USB connectors. I don't remember what I charged with it. Oh, I think I charged my battery pack or something. I don't remember. But this thing's been up and down the Appalachian Trail. It's not heavy. I don't know that I would add it to a long range kit, but it works for what it is. So that was my electronics, my lighting. Old school, I got a Garmin GPS 72. I didn't really use this for navigation. I mainly used it to watch my elevation because it'll give you your current elevation and distance. Tell you the truth, the only reason I took it was because I forgot I had it. I found it in one of my boxes of stuff, and I mean, why not? I didn't really use it that much. I did, like I said, I did use it to check elevation several times, but yeah. And they've been around forever. There's a whole lot better handheld GPSs out there now, so I don't really recommend it. It works. I mean, I have no complaints, but I'm just saying there's better ones out there. So my navigation kit, I don't know who makes this. I actually ordered it off Amazon, but it is a typical field notebook. So I use Write in the Rain books for my field journal. Lumicolor pens. Sunto compass. Highly recommend Sunto. Best compasses money can buy. And an old military protractor grid square thing. So I also bought a small one. And all you do is you take your first page and just fold it, put a couple pieces of tape on it, and you have a pocket for your small protractor. That's where you'll also notice the Write in the Rain pen for the Write in the Rain book. my hunting licenses. That's where I kept all my bear tag, my state hunting license. Now, your maps. So, I did this a couple different ways. I ordered a custom gridded topo map from My Topo, and I also ordered a GMU map, which is published by, I guess, the state of Montana, Department of the Interior, whoever, for that area. It's a game management unit map. They're available on My Topo. At the end of the day, when we got ready to leave, I ended up making my custom grids. I really can't see it, but anyway, off of Cal Topo, and then laminating them in my laminator. These, I think, were far better. I don't know, but Cal Topo, I don't know if you can see that, and they're free. So I kind of wish I would have done that before I spent all the money. But anyway, that's what I ended up carrying, was my Cal Topo maps. My Cal Topo, my Right in the Rain book, my Spot. I used Anchor, battery banks. And that was pretty much it for navigation. I actually do land nav style navigation, which it worked out really easy for us because we pretty much just hunted old Forest Service roads. So you get on the road, you follow it, and when you go off trails, the only time you really got to do land nav. And you got roads on both benches, basically, on either side of the valley, so you can look up and just basically go uphill in any direction, and you're going to go back to a road. So unless you were uphill, then you just go downhill. You know, you should relatively know where you are. So navigating back to a road was not a problem. And then you just work your Forest Service roads around. So I really didn't need the maps all that much anyway. But if you're going, Cal Topo is really the way to go. Sunto compasses, Anchor battery banks. The Brunton solar panel you could probably do without. Remember, we were there for a week, so it's the only reason we had it. And honestly, I would probably get the newer Spot, but they work. And Princeton Tech headlamps. So I'm going to stop here as far as the pack goes. And maybe we'll get into what I actually had on me, because I kept a lot of this stuff like in the brain, the lid of my pack, so that it was easily accessible and quickly accessible. So we're probably going to go into my clothing and what weapons we carried. So moving on, the next part is what I used on the mountain, and what I think about it is what I had on my body, what I carried on my body, and how it worked out. So, not even going to get into how my bag was packed. REI stuff sack. I've since stuck a bunch of stuff in here, but we used U.S. Marine Corps Frog Gear midweight pullover. My backup pants were just a regular pair of, they were Sentinel, Redhead Sentinel, but I never used them. I ended up sleeping in my Frog Gear at night, and it was good down to 40, about 40 degrees. Frog Gear midweight USMC base layer. That was the pants, and then I wore the midweight shirt, and then just a Redhead. I don't even remember what this camouflage pattern is called. Strata long sleeve shirt. My main pants that I wore were Sentinel. The Sentinel logo in Strata camo. And these are pretty cool. They have a little like compression liner that goes over the calf inside the leg. You know, other than that, they're just regular cargo pants. That's what's in the picture in the opener. And those pants were great. They held up all week. Now in the evening in camp, I've had this puffy coat. I don't know who makes it. Mountain Warehouse. Here, put my glasses on. Mountain Warehouse. It's a 600 gram extreme. I've had this coat for several years. Probably can you see? It says Mountain Warehouse. Anyway, this is what I wore on the Appalachian Trail. That's what I wore around camp at night. Fantastic coat. Had really good luck with it. And really enjoyed it. My shirt that I wore most of the time was just a military surplus t-shirt. Nothing special on that. Moving on to my outer layers, I had this puffy coat, and oddly enough, never even wore it. It is a Northern Flight, but I never even wore it. Didn't need it. It got down in the 40s at night, but like I said, I had my black puffy coat on at night. And then my very outer, I had a Strata fleece. I had planned on wearing it to sleep. It is a just redhead Bass Pro Strata quarter zip fleece pullover, but never even wore it. Didn't need it. So I wore a t-shirt during the day with the Instinct pants and a military surplus t-shirt, and then at night I just used the Frog Gear base layers, and that's what I slept in, which we'll get into my sleep system. And it was very well insulated and did very well. So the thing I carried on the outside of my person, Joe Smith Knife Works. This was custom made for Beach Bluff Outdoors a few years back. I told him I wanted a utility knife, a service knife, that would be good for batoning wood, cutting meat, hacking. It was actually to be used out at my cabin with a custom made sheath. But I said it had to be durable, full tang, with hardwood handle. You know, I wanted to be able to beat stuff with it, hit stuff with it, hack, chop, and still be able to cut, strike a ferro rod, you know, whatever. And he made that. And I said, and it needs to be mass producible because I wanted to be able to sell them to you guys. I don't even know if he still makes knives, but we could have this made. It's a very straightforward design. But really liked that knife. Of course, I carried bear spray. I carried counter assault, bear spray, and then I think Saber. I don't remember. I had 2 cans. I kept 1 can in my pack. I kept 1 can in my pocket, my front pocket all the time. You know, quickly accessible, able to deploy. But underneath my bino harness, the Gunfighters Inc. Kenai holster, and this actually, you see how that goes on, and then it wraps around and clips back to itself here, but it sets up on your chest. I wore it under under my bino rig. So it sat like, you know, across my chest, very easily accessible. What I carried was a 1911 45. It's actually a Thesis frame with Wolf springs, Wilson Combat, a lot of Wilson Combat and Wolf internals, custom grips, carried PDX, Defender, and then of course carried extra magazine. But the Kenai holster from Gunfighters Inc. was the ticket, man. I love this thing. It did very well. Did very well. I would highly recommend this. Very, very good piece of kit. So in our hands, we carried, this is 2 3/4 inch, 1600 foot per second, segmented slugs. Nothing, you know, just super duper powerful, but if you've already deployed bear spray, we alternated between, what you call stacking. You run one slug and one, who's this, Federal? Anyway, double alt buck. I don't remember if this is Federal or Winchester. Military grade double alt buck. So you'd run a slug buck. But we carried that, and we kept this in camp. We carried it in our hands up the mountain. And actually, this gun ain't nothing special, but I've had it for years and years. It is a Remington 870 police model, 12 gauge pump, 16-inch barrel. Slug barrel. This was actually my father's gun when he was on the police department locally in the 70s. But yeah, this gun's been up the mountain in Montana now. So really good firearm. You can keep it in your hand. We kept it with us, like, you know, you go do a little fishing. Keep it in camp. Stays in your tent with you, and you don't have to rely on the big 7mm. Of course, show you the final setup of my 7mm that we went with, but we used Hornady Precision Hunter, 175 grain ELDX, which is what we doped the rifle with. So, my complaint with this rifle is it's heavy. So we used Cabela's brand rifle cover, or scope cover. I don't remember how many rounds that holds. A Caldwell bipod. And it's a little heavy. I don't remember the adapter that you use to mount it in here. I don't remember what brand. I think it was like an Olin or something. But the riser, actually I ordered that off Amazon. I ain't gonna lie, it comes with different pads that go in here, you know, to give you different heights. This was the one that really gave me a good cheap weld, the one I ended up going with. Original power is what the tag says here. This is a Weatherby Vanguard in Badlands camo with a Vortex 6 to 18 by 50 optic. It is a second focal plane. Now therein, as far as reviews go, for long range shooting, I highly recommend a first focal plane. I have always shot second focal plane, and I'm kind of used to it, and I still get confused trying to explain the difference. This is actually Weatherby uses Howa receivers, and my only complaint about this firearm in the mountains, and maybe it's because it has a giant optic and a Caldwell bipod, but it was heavy. This gun is really heavy. I never weighed it. I really don't know what it weighs, but I mean, it's got such long range capability, and it's such a smooth shooting gun. I don't really know, at least anything short of shorter distance firepower, like, you know, if you were hunting moose, where you're not going to be taking 400-yard shots, you might go with something else. But other than that, man, for bear, even for, it's a little heavy for antelope, but it gives you the range. But 7mm PRC is a really good gun. So I'm going to get this stuff put up. That was our firearms and what we had on our body. And next we're probably going to break down the pack and go into our food system and our sleep system. What we carried for that. So, moving on.